Hello everybody, FAI here, or I here, and welcome back to another FAI Tips and Tricks video on the Ultimate Guide for Motorsport Manager. This is part 3, and in today's part 3, we will be talking about staff. Now, how does staff help you? What does the staff do? How can you improve with having a good staff? Now, you probably already noticed if this is your first year in Motorsport Manger, which I would assume this is your first year in Motorsport Manger. Now, I can't assume that you didn't take the reins of a team. So, if you took the reins of a team, then your staff is probably not very good, depending on which team you chose. But they're probably not great. They might be great. So, keep this in mind that this is for create a team and not so much for if you took the reins of a team like Predator Racing or Sherman Motorsports or even Panther Racing. Whatever team you chose, if you did choose to take the reins of a team, then this may not apply to you. But keep this staff guide in mind when your staff does get to the point where their contracts are running out and you may have to decide to leave them and then make their contracts run out and replace them, or you decide to fire them and replace them for someone new. So let's get down to it. But like I said, this is more focused towards if you have a created team or you decide to create your own team like we have in this particular video. So when it comes to choosing your staff, choose a staff based on what stat you want to work on the most when it comes down to the car. So, if the car is more like you want to focus on having the best acceleration every year and you almost never want anyone to catch up with you on acceleration, then choose a staff member or lead designer, as we're going to talk about the lead designer first, on, with an acceleration stat or an acceleration, a good acceleration stat. And if you're looking to have a team or a lead designer who is all about top speed, you want someone who can give you the best top speed out there, the best top speed every single year, then look for someone who has a good engine stat, someone who can give you great engine improvement every year. And then, of course, same thing goes for if you're looking for low speed corners, medium speed corners, high speed corners, deceleration, or cornering in general, then, again, think about it in your personal opinion where you're going with your team. Anyway, now, we also have the political talk, political stats. Are you a high budget team, low budget team, and all that other stuff, but we're not getting into political stuff this particular race or this particular guide. This guide is more focused on the staff in general. So, we will touch a little bit on base about budget. So, if you are a high budget team, then go ahead and try to go for someone who is, great. Someone who may be a little more on the expensive side, but because you're a high budget team, next year's car will still be obtainable for you. So, remember that depending on your budget, depending on how you secure resources and stuff, will also depend on what kind of lead designer and mechanic you're going to be getting. So, for instance, if you're a low budget team, don't go for a high budget lead designer. Don't go for a high budget. Anyway, when it comes down to it, if you're a low budget team, don't go for a high budget lead designer. Don't go for a high budget race mechanic, because again, you're going to be spending too much money, and next year's car will just be unobtainable for you, and you may not have the money to secure a great car because you just don't have the money. You don't have the budget. You were a low budget team, and even with the money that you earn from the championship, that wherever the placement is for you, you still may not have enough money to punch out a high budget car next year, or you may not even be able to punch out a great car next year. So keep that in mind as you are scouring through your lead mechanics and stuff. Also keep in mind that some lead mechanics may not, and I'm just going to tell you this, some lead mechanics may not join your championship. So if you're part of like the GT championship, International GT Championship, you may have an open door to have every mechanic want in on your team. Even if you're a low team right now, they may still want to come in on your team because you have potential to bring that up. You have potential to give this mechanic a chance to shine and show that they are this person, this great designer and stuff. Same thing with mechanics. You may be able to have a great mechanic if you can secure if you're part of this high budget series. But if you're a team that is in a lower series, like for instance the International Endurance Cup Class B, you may not have the funds to realistically be part of a bigger championship. You may not have the opportunity to get in these big lead designers that have like 4 or 5 stars. So keep that in mind when you are choosing your lead designer and mechanics. Like I said, rule of thumb when it comes down to it is choose a stat that you feel you want your team to focus on. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll get a lead designer like Roxanne Barnard, who pretty much has good gearbox stats, good front wing stats, good suspension stats, and good rear wing stats. That can really help you if you find a lead designer like that, and sometimes a lead designer like that may be cheap enough that you can break the contract if you want to. Now, the stars also do kind of matter, but don't worry too much about them because at the end of the day, it's not going to be a big problem. Anyway, when it comes down to choosing the negotiation, because once you find your lead designers and stuff, you're going to be in the negotiation process. Once in the negotiation process, it comes down to what do they want. My rule of thumb is always try to go a little bit ahead of the current budget price. So if they're not a unemployed lead designer, for instance, then go a little bit above what they're asking for right off the bat. You may lose a little bit of patience because each designer, each mechanic, and each driver has a certain amount of patience that they'll have to negotiate with you. But at the end of the day, you want someone who can help you out. Now, like I said before, make sure that at first you are going a little bit above on the cost per race of what they have right now. Because when it comes down to the renewal period, they may accept a lower cost per race than they accepted when you first brought them on board. The second thing to keep in mind is when it comes to cost to break the contract, make sure you meet them in the middle. If they are willing to meet you in the middle when it comes to breaking their contract, that will help you out. If you can get them to pay out the contract outright, great. You will be one step ahead of the game. But usually I will say try to meet them in the middle and say, at first, we'll bring you in if you are willing to take half the cost of your contract. Sometimes, like I said, you'll get one mechanic, one lead designer that just says, hey, I'll be willing to pay my whole contract if you are willing to bring me in. Anyway, if you have the money to break the contract outright, then pay for the contract outright, because again, at the end of the day, if you can pay for the contract outright, then your future lead designer or your future mechanic will be very, very happy with you, and they'll be willing to join up on your team almost immediately. But at the end of the day, most of the time, you just want to try and meet them in the middle and maybe see if they'll take or pay half of their contract. Now, third rule of thumb is how long do you make the contract? How long do you keep it? Well, you don't want to do a short contract. Now, if you do a short contract, your lead designer, your mechanics will be very, very happy to accept the contract because it'll only be 1 year. But because this is more focused to the create team aspect. If you're in the create team aspect, then this 1 year contract will be very, very hard on you, because at the end of the day, they are more than likely possibly willing to leave you, and you're back to square one, searching for a mechanic, searching for a lead designer, searching for, all this stuff. And on top of that, you also have to find new drivers at the end of that year. So don't ever go for a 1 year contract if you can help it. Sometimes it may not be something you can negotiate your way out of, but most of the time, the lead designers and the mechanics are flexible enough that they'll be willing to stick with you for 3 years, or they'll even be willing to stick with you for 2 years. Because let's face it, let's touch base on this. At the end of the first season in Create a Driver or Create a Team, your drivers' contracts are running out. And at the end of the day, more than likely, you're not going to want to renew their contracts. Because one driver will always, and I will say this, one driver will always be making you overpay for their contract, cost per race wise. And even if you're a high budget team, you may not want to have that driver, because they are terrible. They are literally terrible. They're at the peak of their stats. They're not going to improve at all, and you're not going to see great race results with them. So don't keep that particular driver, even if you're like, well, I want to give these drivers another chance because they are, X skill. Now, that's if you're a high budget team. If you're in the middle of the road, then, just do what you feel like. If you feel like you want a higher budget team, then go for it. Go for a higher budget drivers. But if you feel like you want lower budget drivers, then go for it. Because again, it depends on how you're playing. If you're playing as a low budget team, then the main idea would be to split as little or as much as you can towards lowering your income / cost per race. Because if you can lower your income / cost per race, then you are one step closer to really being in a better position, maybe to improve. But it's up to you at the end of the day, what you decide to do. Like I said, we'll touch on the budget a little bit more near the end of this video. But those are my thoughts about the staff and everything. Now, what about the mechanics? Well, it's the same idea. When it comes down to the lead designer, look for a stat that you think in particular you as the team principal want. You as your team want to improve every year, and almost every year want to be ahead of the game. If you can, like I said, get a lead designer like Roxanne Barnard, I can't pronounce her name, but if you can get a designer like her, like Roxanne, then you're in good position, because she's going to be pretty good when it comes down to certain aspects of this particular circuit that you're in. If you're not in, the GT circuit and you're in like the single series circuit, then Roxanne may have some attributes that will help you in the end. But it's up to you to really figure out what is your team going to be looking towards going forward. Is your team looking to be the fastest, highest top speed team out there? Are they looking to be the most accelerating team out there? Are they looking to be, like, at the start of every race, just zooming off in the front of the race and in front of the pack? Or are they looking to be like being able to corner like no tomorrow, being able to take turns against every other competition, having later breaking points? It's up to you. I can't talk to you as a team principal because I don't know who you are as a team principal. But I can tell you as a team principal, when I look at my car and I look at the team, I am looking to improve the engine most of the time. I'm also looking to improve the acceleration most of the time because I want to have a car that's hard to catch up to. It may be not great at turns. It may not be great at the acceleration. It may not even be great at cornering. But it's hard to catch up with because it has a very, very fast acceleration. It has a very, very good top speed. And that's what I look for when it comes down to my lead designer. Now, if that's what you are, then, you and me are not that different. But I'm not saying that you and me aren't that different. You and me may be completely different. You may be like, I want better deceleration. I want better cornering. I want my cars to turn very, very close to the line. I want, to be able to handle every single track. And I don't care about top speed. I don't care about acceleration. And if that's you, great. That's fine. I mean, congratulations. I'm glad you have this thought because eventually you're going to have a designer that does give you everything. But I know that at the beginning, you have to decide what is the main stat you're looking towards. What is the main thing that makes the difference for you? Now, when it comes to, like I said, the mechanics, going back to the mechanics, when it comes to the mechanics, you're only really looking at one stat in general. Well, two stats in general, and that is performance and reliability. Performance and reliability, why is this? Well, if you look at how the factory works, or if you're looking at the improvement department, the improvement department is your factory. This determines if you are improving the parts to make them better, or if you're working on the reliability to make it more reliable so that it doesn't break down as often. Most of the time, you want both these stats to be good. And that's where the mechanics come in. You want one mechanic that has good performance stats and one mechanic that has good reliability stats. The rest of the stats don't matter too much. And I know you're going to be looking at concentration, pit stops, part fixes, chemistry, and all that other jazz. Don't worry about that. Those stats do not matter at the end of the day for your team. The only two stats that matter at the end of the day for your team is, does one of your mechanics have good performance, and does one of your mechanics have good reliability? In this case, someone like Eve Hartling, who has a fair bit of potential going forward, she has a great performance stat, which is exactly what we want, which is at 17. And that means that when she is working in the factory to improve the parts, and improve our parts overall, she's giving 0.9 improvement per day. On top of that, if you have all your staff allocated to performance, to improving the performance, that means that she is improving, for instance, maybe the brakes by 2.9 every day. She's improving those parts by 2.9 every day, thus giving you a very, very good chance to really be able to just line up that next part for your next race, and or get that part to being at its top or peak performance by the next race or in the next few races. So keep that in mind. Now, of course, once you find your mechanics and stuff, the negotiation phase is the same idea. I mean, try to keep the cost per race, if they are a part of another team, try to keep the cost per race to the point where it's a little bit above where they are at right now. Same thing goes with breaking the contract. Make sure that you can meet them halfway, or maybe have them split the contract in the middle. But if they can't split the contract in the middle, then try to see if you have the funds, try to see if you can pay it all. But most of the time, I would say you could probably just get away with splitting the contract in the middle. If they are one of those players or one of those mechanics that are just like, hey, I'll pay for it all, then go for the pay for it all option. But I will say the pay for it all option, or having the mechanic pay all of their contract, or breaking their contract, pay for breaking their contract, it may not always work. So keep that in mind when you are negotiating. When it comes to, of course, choosing the sign-on fee, then choose a good sign-on fee. Make the sign-on fee something worthwhile. When it comes to if they're looking for race bonuses, I mean, always look for a driver that may not want a race bonus or may not want to have a have a race bonus for meeting a certain objective. But if you do get that person that does want to meet this certain objective, then make sure it's kind of a high payout, and make sure it's around 8th place or above, because that will help you in general. With that being said, though, that's pretty much all you need to know. Make sure that the contract is like 3 years long or at least 2 years long, because 3 or 2 years long will help you. It will make your cost overall, and not looking for a new lead designer, new race mechanic, or whatever, easier, especially going into next year, because as of next year, like I said before, and I touched base on it, you're going to be wanting to get rid of all your drivers for brand new drivers. For people who are just fresh and maybe better than your previous lineup of drivers. So keep that in mind. Anyway, with that being said, that's pretty much all you need to know. That's everything you need to know about your staff and all the stuff you need to keep in mind. Like I said, if you're a high budget team, and let's talk about budget just a little bit. What makes you a high budget team? Well, a high budget team is someone who has, for instance, puts the budget for next year's car at fat stacks. Now that can be X amount of money, whatever X amount of money is. That's how you become a high budget team. If you become a low budget team, then you have it on cheap. Then you have the budget for next year's car on cheap, which is going to make your cost per race / income per race much, much cheaper. But at the end of the day, you're going to be probably having a harder time getting the best of the best out there. So it's up to you if you want to be cheap. Just remember that being cheap means that it's going to take you a few years, maybe even a little while to really get out there. And of course, if you're medium, you're just medium of the pack. You're not a high budget team, you're not a low budget team. You're just kind of right in the middle. And being a medium of the pack or a medium budget team gives you a lot of options on your cost per race, who you hire, who you fire, and all that other stuff. So keep it in mind when it comes down to it. Anyway, like I said, that's pretty much it for me today on the staff and everything like that. We'll talk more about in the next part about politics and drivers and all that other stuff. We will talk about how to manage the politics, voting, and all that other stuff over time. But just remember that at the end of the day, there's still a lot to go over, there's still a lot to talk about, and there's still a lot to understand. But with this ultimate guide, hopefully this will help you understand it all to where you're not making as many mistakes as I have made to learn it all for you. Anyway, like I said, with that being said, that's it for me. This is pretty much it. This is everything you need to know for part 3, and everything you need to know about having staff, good staff, how to hire the staff, what to do, how to handle it, and all that other stuff. So, with that being said, thank you everybody for joining me today on this video. Thank you for watching this video. Somewhere in the video, you probably saw a pop-up saying to like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow the Twitch channel, which, if you don't know where the Twitch channel is, the Twitch channel will be in the description down below, or you can follow it on www.twitch.tv/FA_EYE. And yeah, I am live there, usually on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday for about 2 to 3 hours until we start getting more interest into the channel. But yeah, with that being said, thank you everyone for joining me. You did probably see the pop-ups somewhere in below. Anyway, with that being said, thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this video. If we can get this video to 10 likes, that'd be amazing. But until the next one, everybody, this is FAI or I signing out and saying farewell, everyone.